bodies, chains, survivors crying for help. The Ibadan Forest wasn't a mystery, it was hell on earth. This is not a horror movie. This is not a legend whispered to scare children. What I'm about to tell you is real. A crime that shook Nigeria to its core in 2014. A crime so dark it blurred the line between myth and reality. And it all began in a quiet forest just outside the bustling city of Ibadan. Ibadan, a city known for its rich culture, busy markets, and history as one of Nigeria's largest urban centers. But in March 2014, the city's name became tied forever to one of the most horrifying discoveries in Africa's recent memory. On the surface, the Soka community, located on the outskirts of Ibadan, looked ordinary. Small houses, farmlands, and dirt paths weaving into the forest. But the forest itself carried an eerie silence. Locals often whispered about strange cries at night, but many dismissed it as superstition. In Nigeria, forests often carried tales of spirits, rituals, and secrets. But what was hidden in this forest was not folklore. It was far worse. It started, like many tragedies, with a disappearance. Commercial motorcycle riders, known locally as Okada riders, had noticed something strange. Their colleagues who carried passengers toward the Soka forest often didn't return. Men vanished without a trace. At first, people assumed they simply moved away or fallen victim to robbery. But whispers grew. Too many riders were disappearing. Families cried for answers. On March 22, 2014, a group of Okada riders decided they had had enough. One of their own had gone missing, and they believed his trail led into the forest. So they gathered, riding in together, unaware that they were about to uncover one of Nigeria's darkest secrets. The men pushed deeper into the Soka forest. The air was heavy, and the deeper they went, the more they felt it, the unnatural silence. Then they heard it. Faint cries, human voices, pleading. As they moved closer, they came across a worn building hidden among the trees. It looked abandoned, but what they found inside would stay with them forever. Chained to the floor, weak and skeletal, were human beings, still alive. Their bodies bore the marks of starvation, torture, and abuse. Some were too weak to speak. Others begged for water, for food, for help. The riders, terrified, rushed to free them. But as they looked around the compound, horror unfolded before their eyes. Scattered around the building were decomposing human remains. Bones, skulls, body parts. Evidence of countless victims who never made it out alive. This was not just a hideout. This was a human slaughterhouse. When locals and eventually the police arrived, the scale of the horror became clear. The house in the forest had small rooms, dark and windowless, with chains fixed to the walls. Survivors later revealed they had been held captive, waiting to be killed. The surrounding ground told its own story. Shallow graves filled with half-buried bodies. The stench of death clung to the air. And then came the most disturbing discovery, evidence of ritual killings. Cut body parts, severed skulls, and indications that the victims had been used for spiritual sacrifices. For decades, Nigerians had whispered about ritual killings, about money rituals where human life was taken in exchange for wealth or power. For many, it was myth. But the Ibadan Forest made those whispers horrifyingly real. 23 people were rescued alive that day. Men and women who had been chained like animals, left to die slowly. Their condition was shocking. They were skeletal, dehydrated, traumatized. Some could barely stand. One survivor recounted through tears, "We heard people being taken away at night. We never saw them again. We knew our turn would come." Another, too weak to speak, simply cried when asked how long she had been there. The rescued were immediately rushed to hospitals, but the scars, both physical and emotional, would last a lifetime. As word spread, crowds gathered at the forest. Thousands of furious locals stormed the site. Many wept, many screamed in disbelief, and many demanded answers. Who owned this place? Who built a house in the middle of the forest where lives were being destroyed? Anger turned to rage as the crowd descended on the building. Some reports say suspected accomplices were captured and lynched by the mob that day. Others claimed that police officers struggled to control the chaos as furious residents burned parts of the property to the ground. The people of Ibadan demanded justice. But justice in this case would be more complicated than anyone imagined. The Oyo State Police confirmed the site as a den of ritual killers and kidnappers. They counted bodies, gathered evidence, and tried to piece together how long this had been happening. But the deeper they looked, the darker it seemed. Who financed this operation? Who was behind it? Could ordinary kidnappers really operate on such a scale, with such organization, without powerful backing? Rumors spread that influential people, politicians, businessmen, traditional leaders may have been connected. Many in Ibadan believed the house was not just a den, but a supply ground for ritualists who needed human parts for ceremonies. But despite the public outcry, very few arrests were made. Names were whispered, accusations flew, but hard evidence never came forward. For many, it seemed as though the full truth was being buried with the bodies. The government quickly moved to erase the horror. The building was demolished. The forest clearing was taken over by the state. And in a symbolic act, a school was later built on the site, meant to represent hope rising from tragedy. But not everyone was satisfied. Many locals still believed the forest carried restless spirits. Parents warned their children never to wander too close. Survivors struggled with trauma, and families of the missing, those whose bodies were never identified, lived with endless questions. How many people died there? Who were the faceless victims whose skulls were found in shallow graves? And most importantly, who were the masterminds that allowed this slaughterhouse to exist right in the heart of Ibadan? The Ibadan Forest of Horror remains one of Nigeria's darkest mysteries, a crime scene that proved ritual killings were more than rumor, a place where human life was reduced to parts, traded, used, discarded. But for every survivor rescued, there are countless families who never saw their loved ones again. For them, the forest is not history. It is a wound that never closed. And the biggest question still lingers in the air. Was justice ever truly served? Or were the most powerful names swept quietly under the rug, leaving the forest to bear the guilt of men who walked away free? Today, if you walk through that area, you'll see a school filled with children, Their laughter replaces the cries that once echoed there. On the surface, life has moved on, but beneath the soil, beneath the foundation, the forest remembers. The Ibadan Forest of Horror is not just a story about crime. It is a reminder of the darkness humans are capable of, and the silence that allows evil to grow.